Welcome, everyone. I'm going to be talking about the Gamepad API and how to use the Gamepad API to control joysticks and gamepads that are connected to the browser. This is what we're going to see. I'll check it during this presentation. First, I'm going to introduce myself, then introduce the API, talk about how it works, how can we develop it, and then show some demos. The original idea was for me to code live and do it everything. But yeah, after seeing how CodePen has been working for other people, I decided to just do a presentation. And so let me introduce myself. My name is Alvaro. I'm from Spain, although I live in Austin, Texas. I'm a software developer at General Motors, where I work developing their websites for Buick, Cadillac, etc., for the brands. And I love web development. I do a lot of HTML, a lot of CSS, but today I'm going to talk about JavaScript. And in particular, I'm going to talk about the Gamepad API. So what is the Gamepad API? It's an API, which means that it's an interface. It's a way that JavaScript allows us to handle and manage game controllers connected to the browser. And this is important, not only to the computer, but to the browser in particular. So we're going to be able to read the information from the game controller using JavaScript, and it doesn't matter which browser we're using. And that's the next point. The Gamepad API is supported by 95% of the current browsers. That means that it's going to work on Safari, Firefox, Chrome. You can plug this bad boy to your phone, and it's going to work too. This is important. And you don't need prefixes. If you want to add them for maybe all browsers, you can do it, but you don't need to do it. It's going to work out of the box. And I need to pay attention to the time. So how does it work? I'm going to talk about the functions, the events that are included as part of this API. The first one is the Gamepad Connected, that is triggered when you connect the Gamepad to the browser. And another one is Gamepad Disconnected, that is triggered when the Gamepad is disconnected. Duh. And that's it. Presentation's over. I told you all the events. Woohoo! Sadly, that's true. Those are the only two events that the API has. And now you're going to say, wait, how can that be? And it's because normally developers were used to have like a passive role. Like we talk to the API and say, hey, I'm going to put an event listener there, and I'm going to be doing all the stuff. And if the user clicks there, you run this function. But the API, Gamepad API doesn't work like that. It requires the developer to have a more proactive approach. We need to be reading continuously. We need to be checking the game controller to see if the state has changed. We cannot just say, hey, tell me when this button was pressed. No. We need to be, hey, Gamepad, tell me your buttons, and is it pressed or not? Which is, I find it interesting because it's a different mindset when developing. I have to admit, I'm not a gamer, so it's weird that I'm talking about this. But to me, it was shocking because I'm used to just like, oh, when it clicks, do this. But no, in this time, it was the opposite. And also, another thing that we need to take into account is that we need to do it continuously. We cannot just be doing it, oh, I read the Gamepad once, I'm done. No, you need to be checking continuously. And that's one thing that I'm going to go in a second. I'm going to say that a lot in this presentation. So how do we get the Gamepads? How do we get, because I said that we are calling continuously for information. So we do it with the navigator get gamepads function. This one is going to return an array with the gamepads that are in the browser. And this is a little bit tricky because it's not the ones that are connected. It's the gamepads. So for example, Firefox and Safari will return a list of the gamepads that are connected, but Chrome will return a list. They don't care if there's nothing connected. They will return a list of 4. And you may find yourself trying to interact with a gamepad that doesn't exist. So we need to be careful with that. and I'm going to show it later in the code. So what is a gamepad? I'm going to explain real quick. ID, somebody may think, oh, it's a unique identifier. No, it's a description. So for example, if I connect this one, it will say something like, oh, it's a knockoff Super Nintendo game controller, USB. Index is the actual unique identifier. Normally is the number, the order in which it was connected to the browser. Connected is if it's connected or not. It may seem like a dot thing, but it's tricky because sometimes this one, no, but there's more complex gamepads that they go to sleep. So they may be connected to the browser, but they're sleeping. So connected will return false. So they're connected to the computer, but they're not connected to the browser. And that's a tricky situation. Timestamp is when it was connected. Mapping is something that we're going to see in the next slide. But the idea is that there's a schema that all the gamepads follow for the buttons. So it's something like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, blah, blah, blah. So if it follows that map as it's defined in the standard, it's a standard gamepad. If not, it's an empty array. We can have the extra reality, XR, and that stuff. I'm not going to talk about that. No time in 25 minutes. Axis, that's the joystick. So that's an array of double, and I'm going to explain it a little bit because it's fun. Buttons is an array of buttons. And a button is something that is funny because it's another object that can be pressed, touched, and have a value. Press, obvious, if it's pressed or not pressed, true or false. Touch, not all the gamepads have this one. For example, you may have your finger, this one doesn't have it, but some controllers, if you have your finger on top of the button, they will notify you. Well, they will not, you will need to read it. So they will mark touch as Boolean. And also some gamepads, they allow to press a little bit down depending on the strength that you press. They will return a value that is normally between 0 and 1. But in this case, it's only 1, so don't worry about it. Touches, oh no. Touches, that the next one after buttons. That's a recent one that was added not so long ago. Not so long ago, maybe 2 years, but not so long ago. So there's some controllers that they have like a touchpad. Like, I don't know if you have seen the Xbox, the accessibility controller that has some really nice, like, so that is what is returning. It's a different object that has the coordinates of where the position of where you're pressing. I'm not going to talk about that. And it returns a vibration actuator. That is a fun thing. That is some controllers, they can vibrate, not this one, because this one is a Super Nintendo knockoff. And the idea is that I said that you can only read, and I lied a little bit, because you can actually say, hey, send a pulse and vibrate. So there's a little bit of things that you can do. Now, I was telling that all the gamepads have to follow this to be considered standard. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If your gamepad doesn't have 16 buttons, it's going to be non-standard automatically. That doesn't mean that it's not following this schema. For example, this gamepad is considered non-standard because it only has 10 buttons. But the buttons follow that schema. That's important. And the tricky part is that there's no way to remap the buttons. You need to do it manually. There have been talk online, and I may have missed something lately, but as recently, you have to do it. If it's not standard, you need to calibrate it with the user. Say, hey, click on this button, and you need to map it yourself. In the examples that I'm going to show later, it's already mapped, so it works perfectly fine. And now, how to develop. Now that we have talked a little bit about that, I don't know if, oh yeah, it's big. So this is terrible coding, and I apologize for that in advance. It considers that you're only going to connect one gamepad, but you can connect more than one. As I mentioned, Chrome returns an array of 4. So that's the limit in Chrome. Firefox and Safari, I haven't tested how many you can plug in, but you can plug more than one. And actually, I have plugged 2 because I had a Pong game with my kids playing, and they really liked it. even when it's boring. But anyway, so we can connect, disconnect, and now this is the fun part. As I was mentioning, Chrome returns an array that may have no values. So when we check the gamepad, we need to check that it exists. Because if we don't do that, we're going to do a for each and a null. Our code is going to crash, and whatever we're doing is kaput. So really important. You can see the get gamepads there. Another important part is this. As I mentioned, we need to be continuously checking for the gamepad. So people may say, oh, why don't you use set interval or like a set timeout? The problem with those two functions is that they are not really reliable. Like you may say run every 10 milliseconds, but if you are running other operations, they may run after 12 or after 20 or after 9. Well, not 9, but 10. That may be too much or too little. And that's not good because any gamers here? A few. Wow, you should be talking about this, not me. Anyway, so what happens if the sequence, the cadence of the checks is too often, is more often than what it should be? You are running extra operations that you shouldn't be doing. You are making the computer operate more than what it should. What happens if you run this check too late? You get lag. And what is lag? The worst thing that can happen to a gamer. So instead of using set timeout or set interval, we're going to use request animation frame. This function, I don't know if you know it, it's called, like, you know, these screens, they refresh every time, like 60 megahertz is like, I don't know, 60,000 times a second? No, million? Well, I don't know. The math is difficult. I cannot do math at 3 p.m. So every time that the screen is going to refresh is when we check the gamepad. That way, we make sure that we are not running the operations too soon or too late. It's like the Goldilocks, just right, at the right moment. And that's what we want to do. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the buttons. I said it's an array of button objects. As I mentioned, it can change from controller to controller because some controllers have 10, some have 16. But the good thing is that all of them have the same format, and that's important. And it's this format, and it follows this. One important thing to take into account, when you press a button, it's pressed all the time. So this is something that when I started developing this with this, it got me a little bit upset because I click on the button 0 and I was expecting to just run once. I had an event listener, oh, if it's pressed, run this function. And I found myself like I was running. And it's because it's going to be pressed all the time until you release the button. So when you're using the Gamepad API, you need to keep track of the previous value. And for example, only run the function that you want to associate to a button if the previous state was not pressed. Otherwise, you may find that you're rerunning the function when you don't have to. And that's bad. Because yeah, if you're running a character and you're using the axe and the joystick, and you press it and you think that it's going to only move one step and it goes out of the screen. You don't want that. So be careful with that. The joystick, it's an array of numbers. This is interesting because the even indexes are the horizontal value, the odd indexes are the vertical, and they are counting from the center, which is really funny. So if you move up, it's going to be minus something, between 0 and 1. Sorry, between -1 and 1. And you need to be careful with this because Firefox. So welcome to Firefox that decides that each joystick, instead of having 2 units, vertical and horizontal, is going to have a third one for some reason that nobody knows. That is probably, you know, if you can pull, there's joysticks that you can pull them or push them. So Firefox accounts for that. Chrome and Safari, they don't care. So when you're programming for the Gamepad API and you want to use a joystick, you need to check if the array of axes have 4 or 6 values. Because if it has 6, the second joystick doesn't start in position 2, it starts in position 3. And you can have some issues with that. But yeah, that's just a trick. Well, a trick, something that you would have to suffer like I suffered. And as I was mentioning, the joystick, it comes from the center. -1 would be to the left, 1 to the right, -1 up, 1 down. And another important thing, a joystick is never at 0. So even when at rest, it's going to have a value of 0.001. So if you're checking to move, if the value is greater than 0, move to the right or move to the left or do this, you're going to have a problem because it's going to be moving the character all the time. So I recommend that when using the axis, you put a threshold that, for example, if it's more than 0.2, then you perform the action. Otherwise, don't, because you may find yourself with a character that is moving when you are not really touching the joystick, and that's not good. Also, because it's a long number, you can play with it. Like, for example, between 0.2 and 0.7, walk. Between 0.7 and 1, run. So you can play with those values. Don't limit yourself to just doing one action for one thing. Let's go to the next one. So the vibration, again, it's not available in all the gamepads, but it's in the definition, which is good. And normally what you do is that you send the duration of how much it's going to vibrate and the intensity. Different gamepads have different values. And one of the issues is that the definition changes by browser. And again, Firefox. So Firefox came up with their own definition, which is weird, although I think they're keeping up now with the new method that is a lot simpler, by the way. You just say, intensity. Oh, it's intensity. I don't know how to write. I don't even know what that means. So basically, you say a value between 0 and 1, how intense you want the pulse to be, the vibration, and the duration in milliseconds. The old method, again, Firefox, I think, updated to the new method, but still all versions of the browser will use that one. The play effect is messy, is a pain in the neck. So as you can see, there's a lot of things in this API. I just went super fast around it. So my recommendation is, if you're going to use it, you should develop a small library, because otherwise having to keep check of all the values before and after is a pain in the neck. So thank you. And I'm going to show some demos if that's okay with you. I recommend that you use the gamepad and try new things. And I'm going to show you how to create how I create a whack-a-mole game. But you can create it. It's really simple. But just in case, you can make it even simpler. If you remove 5 of the 9, you just keep 4. You give it the same colors at the buttons, so it's easier to follow. You organize them a different way, so they're separated. That's good. Then you change the hammer for, something nimble and nice, and you put something to hold it. And all of a sudden, you have a game that made $3 billion 10 years ago. So just saying, don't think that this is silly, like whack-a-mole can turn into a $3 billion game. Wow. Anyway, so I have some demos, and I have the links to CodePen, but CodePen fails. So I spent some time earlier running this into my logo. So let's start with the connect disconnect. It's a really simple code. One thing that you may notice, I just connected the gamepad and nothing happened. That's because sometimes you need to press a button for it to trigger the connection. It's not always, but it happens. Then you disconnect and it will go away. By the way, it's fun to try if you have an old Dance Dance Revolution mat. My kids love that. They love also the drums with the from the gamepad. Sorry, the Rock Band. For the buttons, for example, whoops. I press the blue activates. Press the up. You can see this is all JavaScript. And a funny thing, if you think these are buttons, they're not. This is a joystick. It took me 5 minutes too long to realize that. But yes, it's a fun thing. Anyway, a joystick. Here we have a demo with Super Pepe Bros. Nothing to do with Nintendo. And you can see how I'm moving. Yeah. I don't know if this one. No, it doesn't. Okay, I have another version that you press the button and it says, "Oh, it's me, Pepe," but not this one. Sorry, I can put it again if you want to. Okay. And now I have an Arcanoid that, again, you can press start and the ball will start, and then you can move it to the right or to the left. And yes, it will go. You press select and it will restart, and I just died. Thank you. And finally, this is the fun thing, the whack-a-mole, but with the twist for music. Oh, no. It's not available. Okay. So the idea is that my kids love when I put this, when I plug they used to see me playing Rock Band and they love that. So I created this game for them. And actually, they put My Little Pony songs. That, you know, the thing is that My Little Pony is never going to make it to Rock Band, but they like My Little Pony, and that's what they like. So you can create it, and even without music, it's a pity. But you can see the green button is active. Normally, you would have the drums here. They were too bulky. I'm sorry. I should have brought them. So I press the green button, and it goes away. Now the yellow. Blue, yellow again, yellow again, yellow again. Yeah, man. Anyway, so this is a really easy game to develop. In the links, I have a tutorial on how to do it. I say, oh, how to do it in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Let's make it 15. But yeah, it's a fun one. So this is the presentation. To be honest, we have 2 minutes. If anybody has questions or anything, please. Sorry? Uh-huh. Yes, you need to develop that yourself, which is painful. But yeah, especially when you need to do it in JavaScript. By the way, all these demos are HTML and vanilla JavaScript. I don't know if that helps with anything, but it's fun. It's disappointing. So yeah, I don't know why it was working earlier. Oh, it is. It has a music video from YouTube. If you have the YouTube API, you can put it. Another thing that you can do, use AI to analyze a song. So it finds the beat and it marks the colors based on the beat. Instead of me, that I did a version for kids. So it's basically when you click one, it goes to the next one. But you can do something more complex. Any other question? Any other comment? Anything? There. Yeah. Yeah. I map it myself. I cheated for the presentation. So it should be 0, 1, 2, 3, and this one is 0, 1, 2, 3. So for the presentation, if you look at the code, I will have a comment that is, I'm sorry, and the remapping done poorly. But yes, you will need to code it. Did you have any question? No. What? No, this is vanilla JavaScript. It's all running locally on the browser. There's no connection to the internet. There's nothing. The video is using YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. Sorry. Anybody? Oh, there. 20 of these, $10 at Amazon. They're terrible. They're terrible. They are all non-standard, but they work. I have my old, and I think it's time's up. So yeah, thank you everybody for attending. I love it.